What's up, BookTube? Sandy Golston back here with my weekly wrap-up video, and I'm going to talk to you about the 3 books that I finished this past week and some of the books that I am going to focus on as we close out the month of February. Now, I am going to deviate, of course, from my TBR because that's just what I do. But I think it's going to be for a good cause. I'll talk about that next. First up is a book that I was excited to read, and I thought it was going to be very, very interesting. It was a book that I've had in my collection for quite some time, but I've decided not to because I kind of got exhausted of a certain type of book. But seeing other people talk about it again kind of renewed my interest in this particular book, and that is American Marriage. And so, American Marriage by Tayari Jones is aptly named because it is about an American marriage, not so much in the broad sense, but in the sense of what life is like in America for families affected by law enforcement, the law, the legal process, when it doesn't work for people of color, for black men in particular, the way it does for other people, and the damage that can happen to families. And this book is just so powerfully written. It was very moving. I'm not always a totally emotional person, but this one really struck a lot of chords with me. And it's really just, it says on the back cover, New York Times Book Review, haunting, beautifully written, and from the New Yorker, powerful, both sweeping and intimate. And it is. It's told from 3 perspectives primarily. The perspective of the guy that is imprisoned unjustly, and the 2 other key characters who play a role and they form this uncomfortable triangle. And so it was hard to read at times because there's chunks of the story that are told through the letters that the husband and wife are sending back and forth to each other. And you can just feel the emotion, the authenticity of what's being said is just immensely powerful. So I won't go too deep into it. I'll save a little bit more for my end of the month wrap up, but just a really good book, very powerful read, and Oprah's book club pick from 2018. So I've had it for probably a little over a year, and I finally got around to reading it. I'm glad I did. Very, very powerful read. Even though it's probably uncomfortable in a lot of spots, it's still very uncomfortable, but yet it's still, while uncomfortable, it's still significant and important. Next up, I finished When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and this is kind of a creepy, I don't want to say horror, but thriller kind of story written in an urban area talking about the topic of gentrification. And it's a really powerful book. I didn't get as much of the creepy factor in it as some people thought was coming, as some people did see. I didn't feel that quite as much, but it was an intriguing story. It was one that I had on my radar for quite some time. I was looking forward to reading it, and it finally, I don't know what sparked my interest, but it was on my Kindle for a while, and I finally decided to just scroll back to get to the point where it was in the Kindle, and I decided to start reading it while I was reading some other books. So I'm reading like a couple of books on the Kindle, and then maybe at least 1 or 2 physical books depending on how things are working. And so I decided to jump into that one and read it relatively fast, and it was a really interesting read. It was a well-told story. It was an interesting story when you think of trying to tell a gentrification story from that standpoint. And for a lot of people, gentrification is an extremely important issue that's taking place, particularly in a lot of urban communities across the country. So, it was really, it was good. It was a really good story. I was glad I picked it up, and I think it's a story that I can see why a lot of people were really high on it. So, When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, definitely one I think you should check out. Next up, I decided to jump into Elantris, my first chance to read a Brandon Sanderson book. And so I had said last year that I was going to try two particular authors. And one was Sarah J. Maas, and I did read one of her books last year, late last year in the month of December, A Court of Thorn and Roses. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And then I decided I needed a Brandon Sanderson book to read. And I noticed that some book clubs were reading Elantris. And so I decided to pick that one up. I got it as a good deal. Now, to be completely honest, you know me, those of you who have followed this channel, you know that I don't like particularly long books. I prefer books that are probably in the high 200s to low 300 range, and Brandon Sanderson books typically go a little bit longer than that, although he does have some books, I think maybe some of his standalone books that are a little bit shorter and a little bit quicker hitting that I think probably will appeal more to me. So I'm going to be looking at some of those options moving forward with Brandon Sanderson. So I am definitely excited to continue to pursue my interest in Brandon Sanderson books. I've really enjoyed some of his lectures where he talks about world building. The book project that I'm going to be taking on probably in the next month or so is going to require significant world building. So I've been watching some of his lectures on world building, and I feel like I've come up with some really good tips, and he is really outstanding when it comes to world building. So that's one of the things I think that makes his books so appealing to a lot of people. So definitely looking forward to checking out more Brandon Sanderson books in the future. So that does it for the books that I finished from last week. And now I'm going to focus on some of the books that I'm either reading currently or looking forward to reading. And this does not account for probably some books that I'm going to be looking at on my Kindle once I get done with the books that I'm currently reading on the Kindle. So stay tuned for that. That is, well, that's one of those play it by ear things. You know how that goes. So the first book that I'm going to talk about that I'm finishing up right now is Color of Justice, a novel of suspense by Gary Hardwick. This is a book that I talked about last week. It's set in Detroit. It's kind of a crime mystery type book, suspense obviously, and I'm actually enjoying it. It's really interesting. It's a little bit grittier because it's set in Detroit. I know a lot of the places that they're talking about, so that makes it a little bit extra interesting to me, and I really like the way that the author draws the characters. So this is a little bit of an older book that I've had in my collection for a while, and I'm trying to work through some of the books that I have had in my collection for a while to try to work through not only the stacks behind me and the ones next to me, but the ones in other places throughout the house and in the garage. So stay tuned. So this one goes back to 2002, and again, I've had this for a while. Picked this up at, I think it was at an outlet mall bookstore down by Detroit. So definitely looking forward to finishing this one. I'm about a quarter of the way through it, so I've got some work to do, but it's a good quick read. I don't think I'll have any problems knocking this one out this week. Next up, I decided to take up one of my Book of the Month picks, one of my Book of the Month add-ons, and it's a book that a lot of people were really excited about, and it was the Book of the Month, Book of the Year for 2020, and that is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. So this is a great story about, it sounds like a great story. I guess I'll know for sure once I actually read it. But based on the reviews, it sounds like this is going to be a book that is going to be really entertaining. It's interesting right now. I have a lot of books about situations involving siblings, particularly sisters. So this is another in those lines with a racial component that I think is going to be really interesting. So it's about sisters who grew up in a small black southern community and running away at age 16. It's not just the shape of their daily lives that is different as adults, it's everything, including their racial identities. Many years later, one sister lives with her black daughter in the same southern town she once tried to escape. Across the country, the other secretly passes for white, and her white husband knows nothing at all about her past. So you got kind of that mystery angle. You got the two siblings leading different lives. And so I'm looking forward to kind of unraveling the mystery and seeing what it's all about. This book is very highly thought of, so I'm definitely excited to read The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Looking forward to it. Next up is a book that I've talked about a few times, and I'm definitely looking forward to jumping into it, and that is The Black Kids by Christina Hammons Reed. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but it has to do with life in Los Angeles in 1992. You got Rodney King going on, you've got the riots going on. It's a little bit before the O.J. Simpson case, saga, whatever you want to call it. So I'm looking forward to reading this one. Excellent cover art with a young black female and the glasses with the palm trees burning within the glasses. So excellent cover art, very engaging. I'm really looking forward to checking this one out, The Black Kids by Christina Hammons Reed. And lastly, the Kindle book that I'm currently reading is The Pink Pony: Murder on Mackinac Island is one I'm excited about. I stumbled across it. It, of course, has a Michigan angle to it, which is always interesting. It has a Mackinac Island angle on it, which I also found particularly intriguing. So, and having heard so much about the Pink Pony, and I've walked past it on Mackinac Island, I've seen it. I've never experienced it, but I'm just excited to see how this thing unfolds. I'm about 40-ish pages through it, so it's a relatively short novel, maybe not novella, but short novel length. So I think it'll be easy to just work through this pretty quickly. And so I'm looking forward to having that one finished by the end of the week, by the end of the month, certainly. So some interesting stuff going on in this story. I really like it. I like the kind of mystery thing going on, and then when it's set in an area that I'm somewhat familiar with, that just makes it all the more intriguing. So I'm excited to finish up The Pink Pony: Murder on Mackinac Island. Looking forward to knocking that one out. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the books that I've finished from last week, and then I gave you a tease of the books that I want to work on and finish up this week and finish up strong to close out the month of February in 2021. So it's been a positive month of reading in February, and last year in 2020 I got off to a good start and then kind of stalled a little bit, but still more than beat my Goodreads goal for the year. And so I'm already off to a really good start with my Goodreads goal. No doubt I'm going to be able to knock that out and then even run up the score at some point. So looking forward to that. Thank you for joining me for this particular video, and I'm looking forward to actually wrapping up the month of February soon. So be on the lookout for that, as well as more content. Please check out the lives that I do. I do live usually on Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, so join me for that. They're productivity sprints, and you're welcome to join me and come in. If you're cool and you're really nice and you want to, I can throw you a link and you can jump on there with me and we can do some writing sprints together. So just out here trying to have fun and enjoy the BookTube and AuthorTube experiences, and hopefully you'll stay with me on this journey.